On April 15, 1912, the RMS Titanic sank in the North Atlantic Ocean after striking an iceberg. More than 2,200 people were on board. Only about 700 survived. At the time, the Titanic was widely described as practically unsinkable. This belief affected how both passengers and crew reacted after the collision. Inside the ship were 16 watertight compartments. The Titanic was designed to remain afloat if up to 4 of these compartments flooded. After the iceberg impact, flooding reached 5 or more compartments, which exceeded the ship's design limit and made sinking unavoidable. The watertight walls inside the ship did not extend to the upper deck. As the bow sank lower, seawater spilled over these walls and moved forward from one compartment to the next. First-class passengers were housed on the upper decks, close to the lifeboats. They had the shortest and clearest routes to evacuation areas. Many first-class passengers were informed earlier that something was wrong, but were initially reassured that there was no immediate danger. Because of this, some delayed boarding lifeboats. Survival rates among first-class passengers were the highest on the ship. About 60% of first-class passengers survived, especially women and children who were prioritized during evacuation. Second-class passengers were located below first class but above third class. Their routes to the lifeboats were longer and less direct. Second-class passengers received mixed instructions. Some were guided to the boat deck quickly, while others waited longer for clear orders. Roughly 40% of second-class passengers survived, a lower rate than first class, but significantly higher than third class. Third-class passengers were housed deep within the ship, on the lowest decks. They were the farthest from the lifeboats. Reaching the boat deck required navigating long corridors, stairways, and complex layouts. Some passageways were restricted or guarded, slowing movement upward. Many third-class passengers were not clearly informed about the seriousness of the situation until much later. By the time they reached upper decks, many lifeboats had already been launched. Only about 25% of third-class passengers survived. The Titanic carried more than 880 crew members. They were responsible for communication, evacuation, and maintaining order. Many crew members continued working until the final moments, operating lifeboats, sending distress signals, and keeping electrical systems running. Crew survival rates were among the lowest. More than 75% of the crew died, especially engineers and workers stationed below deck. The Titanic carried 20 lifeboats, enough for only about half of the people on board. Even so, many lifeboats were launched with empty seats. Early in the evacuation, officers were unsure how much weight the boats could safely carry. This caution led to partially filled launches. As lifeboats ran out, hundreds of people remained on deck with no remaining escape. As the ship's angle increased, walking became difficult. Floors tilted, stairs became steep, and loose objects slid across decks. Electrical power weakened as flooding reached generator rooms. Lights were kept on as long as possible to maintain order. The North Atlantic water temperature was near -2 degrees Celsius, 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyone who entered the water experienced cold shock within seconds. Most people in the water did not die from drowning. They died from hypothermia, losing muscle control and consciousness within minutes. As the stern lifted high into the air, the ship's structure was placed under extreme stress. The hull eventually broke apart. Hundreds of people were thrown into the sea as the deck angle became too steep to stand on. Only a few lifeboats returned to search for survivors, fearing they would be overwhelmed by the number of people in the water. By the time rescue ships arrived, most victims had already died from exposure to the cold. In total, more than 1,500 people died. Survival depended heavily on class location, access to lifeboats, and timing. The Titanic did not sink because of a single mistake. It sank because its design limits were exceeded. Who lived and who died was decided by what happened after the impact.